In Crime and Punishment tonight, Steven Spielberg's real-life drama. The filmmaker is reportedly one of several famous Americans allegedly victimized in a $50 billion swindle, perhaps the largest fraud ever committed on Wall Street. And it's not just the famous who may have been fooled. A trusted financial giant is accused of scamming big money clients and charities into thinking they were getting rich, when in reality, investigators say he was stealing their money. Authorities call the scheme stunning and far-reaching. With new developments tonight, here's Joe Johns.
The roll call of investors who may have lost millions in the Bernie Madoff scandal reads like an American Society A-list. Movie director Steven Spielberg's charity, billionaire publisher Mort Zuckerman, Fred Wilpon, the owner of the New York Mets, New Jersey Senator Frank Lautenberg's family foundation, Nobel Peace Prize winner Elie Wiesel's Foundation for Humanity. And it's not like all the charities and foundations affected were throwing money at Madoff to get quick returns. The Jet Foundation of New York technically had nothing to do with him at all. The problem was that the Levy church family that gave up to $30 million a year to the foundation used Madoff for their investments. After Madoff crashed, the foundation, which supports justice issues and election reform, decided over the weekend to shut down by the end of next month.
I do view it as a tragedy. I think it's a tragedy, obviously, for the people that we support, the issues we care about, and for the personal lives of everyone who's going to lose a job.
But it wasn't all about the high rollers. Today on Good Morning America, Joan and Arnold Sinkin, who had saved close to $1 million from his job as a carpet salesman, gave it to Madoff and may have lost everything.
You can get in with Bernie Madoff. Wow, you're lucky. And it's just gone in one telephone call.
This is what they refer to as the golden years,
and
where you retire and you try and enjoy life, and then you get wiped out in 48 hours.
Another sign of the impact. Over the weekend, 4 multi-million-dollar condos owned by Madoff investors in this Florida complex went up for sale when Madoff went down. Late Monday, a federal judge issued an order that may help investors get some of their money back through a fund that replaces missing stocks and securities. The total cost to the alleged fraud in the billions of dollars. Joe Johns, CNN, Washington.
More in a moment on how this happened while the watchdogs were sleeping and how so many savvy people allegedly got conned. We're going to dig deeper with Ali Velshi and Jeffrey Toobin coming up. And later, this man's story may go down as the worst of them all. Bernard Madoff, is accused of scheming investors out of fortunes. The total take, about $50 billion. Investigators say he used a Ponzi scheme, paying off clients with money from other clients until the bitter end. Now, question of what happens now. Let's dig deeper with Chief Business Correspondent Ali Velshi and CNN Senior Legal Analyst Jeffrey Toobin. So, Ali, if the allegations of this epic scam are true, how exactly could this guy have built some extremely savvy investors out of the billions? How did it work?
It may not be the only Ponzi scheme out there. Ponzi schemes tend to collapse when things go bad and people want their money back. But while times are good, Bernie Madoff was offering investors a good return. So here's how it would work. Here's Madoff, and he'd have investors, let's say 5 of them, and he was offering them between 10 and 12% a year. But he may not have actually been doing anything to generate that return. The way you pay those people their interest every year is you go to another investor who will provide money so that you pay it off. Basically, that's a Ponzi scheme. You're using new investors to pay off the returns of old investors. Well, what happens then is now he's got more investors because that one that he got the money from is now one of his investors, so he has to go and get more people. This continues to work because what tends to happen is people get a consistent return on their money, so they don't take it out after they get their 12 or 15%. They put it back in. They keep on going. It comes apart, and again, you see how this grows, and he's got more people. This is how it was growing. What happens then is that times turn tough. People this year needed their money. They'd call up and say, I need to redeem my money. A Ponzi scheme only works if somebody is continually putting revenue into the system, and that's when it breaks down, when it doesn't. So it's a confidence game. That's why it worked. That's why he was able to pull it off. People thought they were lucky, as you just heard in Joe's piece, to be invited to invest with Bernie Madoff. Anderson?
Yeah, there was like millions of dollars just to be able to buy in with the guy. Jeff, what are the chances people are going to get their money back?
You know, there's this wonderful American assumption that, well, if there's $50 billion out there, they'll just get the money back. It'll never happen. The iron rule of these sorts of scams is that the money is basically all gone. If these investors get pennies on the dollar, and I'm talking less than 10 cents, they'll be lucky because the money generally just drifts away.
There is a fund, though, to repay investors up to a certain amount, isn't there?
It's very small. And what Jeff's talking about is the fact that even in a public company where the records are clear and you knew what was going on, investors in a bankruptcy get pennies on the dollar because it's such a long process and the lawyers get that money. In this case, they still have to figure out where this money is.
But how did go ahead.
So according to the complaint, he says he has maybe $300 million left. Undoubtedly, that's an overstatement, but $50 billion compared to $300 million gives you some idea of what you're paying.
Which he allegedly wanted to try to give away in bonuses as quickly as possible to his employees
Right.
before he was turned in by his own two sons.
But that's it. The Ponzi scheme means it's gone, so there's no point in...
What about the SEC? I mean, didn't they audit this guy a couple years ago?
Yeah,
Twice.
The problem with the SEC is that it's never been a very toothy organization. We learned this in the scandal in
It seems
2001,
positively
2000.
gummy. I mean, it doesn't seem like they have any teeth.
They generally have to respond to a complaint, and there were complaints, but they have to respond specifically to a complaint. They don't sort of proactively tend to go out there and see what's going on. So remember, when things are good, and while a Ponzi scheme exists, things are good. When things are good, nobody complains about what's going on. People are now saying they were suspicious as to how in a market that goes up and down, this guy was able to return 10 to 12% every year. But suspicion doesn't necessarily mean you do anything about it.
And he always said, oh, it's my secret formula, I don't want to talk about it.
And the other thing is he had his own bank, essentially, is that he did his own transactions, he said. Usually in a hedge fund, they will hire a Goldman Sachs or a Morgan Stanley to do their transactions, so there is some actual record from a big company.
And possibility of conspiracy if you've got something going. But
I mean, more
he claims he did a lot of this on his own.
He didn't even know he had invested money, and he'd given money to another guy to invest for his charity, and that guy had given the money to Madoff.
I heard that from a former colleague of ours from CNN who had $30,000 invested in another firm.
I was going to say, a former colleague of ours had enough money to invest in this guy.
But you know, a modest investment in another firm that had given their money to this firm to invest. And you see these connections. This is what's happening. Not everybody thought they were investing with Bernie Madoff. Some people thought they were investing with someone else who was giving their money to Bernie Madoff.
It's amazing how everything is just unraveling. I mean, all these schemes are coming up. There's this other attorney who's stolen allegedly hundreds of millions of dollars. I mean, there's going to be more of this kind of stuff.
This is what happens. As the economy slows down, people want their money back. That's when you see them unravel.
That's when they see them
He's going to do jail time, no doubt about it.
Oh, big jail time. But in terms of restitution, no one should get their hopes up.
Wow. All right, Jeff Toobin, Ali Velshi, thank you. Unbelievable story. Still ahead, breaking news.